Okay, I think we're ready to begin our webinar. And first of all, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Arnold and I'm Vice President of Products here at LeveragePoint. This is another one of our monthly webinars of thought leadership in value-based strategy, sponsored by LeveragePoint. We provide the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a cloud-based collaboration platform that links all cross-functional team members involved in building and executing a value-based strategy that changes the way companies create, communicate, and capture value. Now, during the webinar, if you have any specific questions or comments, please feel free to enter them in the right-hand panel in the questions section. And then later in the webinar, we'll respond to as many of them as we can. Also, we encourage you to complete a very brief survey upon exiting today's webinar, because if you do, you'll be eligible to win a copy of the book, The ROI of Pricing, which, by the way, was edited by today's presenter. So let me give him a brief introduction. Today's speaker is noted pricing expert and author, Dr. Stephan Liozu. Dr. Liozu currently runs his own consultancy practice called Value Interruption Advisors and offers an acclaimed certification program called CVM, Customer Value Modeler, for business professionals. In addition, he's an adjunct professor and visiting scholar at Case Western Reserve University, and he also holds a seat on the advisory board of the Professional Pricing Society. So with that, welcome, Stephan. Really glad to have you with us today.
Well, thanks very much. And as always, it's a pleasure to give a webinar for your current client prospect and anybody who wants to learn more about what it takes to do value strategies and how to change a culture towards value and pricing excellence. So, and the subject of today's webinar is about one of these components that is critical to move to move a culture towards a greater level of value excellence. So, I've been doing quite a bit of work on the topic of collaboration, and I found that it's highly relevant in today's world when more companies are involved in pricing, more companies are doing investments in tools and software and platforms such as LeveragePoint platform. But at the end of the day, a lot of companies are also stuck in the cultural transformation to reach greater level of value and pricing excellence. So most often they are in the zone of good intentions. They are trying things. But there is reasons why their teams are not collaborating, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Obviously, in half an hour we can only cover so much. There's going to be a lot of writing done around the topic of collaboration. I'm also happy to announce a book that's going to come out in October called Pricing and the Sales Force: How to Get These Two Teams to Collaborate More. So I hope that you can engage your teams, whether you're in marketing, pricing, sales, or finance, or general management, to to embrace a greater level of collaboration and alignment to reach greater success in pricing and value management. So, in essence, I'm going to start with a little cartoon that probably most of you have seen on LinkedIn or on my website, but pretty much there's some myth and perceptions in pricing that really impact the pricing culture of an organization and also the value culture. And most of the time, I'm able to talk to pricing professionals, and they are telling me that they're still considered to be the no department. So that inspired me to write this story. But besides the funny story here, I think there is a greater implication of the internal perception of pricing teams and organization, and how that this perception encourage or impede the level of collaboration between the critical teams that need to be involved in value excellence and value strategies. So there is I believe that there is going to be a lot of a correlation or interrelationship between a company's pricing culture and the company value culture. And it all depends at the end of the day, when I'm lucky to work with organizations, is who is initiating the work in pricing, who is starting to have discussions on the need to capture greater value. If it's the pricing team, and that is the case more, a lot when the pricing teams want to start deploying value-based pricing and value-based strategies, but at the end of the day, they are stuck in a little bit of a conundrum where the rest of the organization is not fully aware of what value means, and their internal perception and the company's pricing culture is not conducive of the adoption and assimilation of more value strategies. So really, a pricing culture does influence collaboration, and you could ask yourself these questions. Who's the driving force in an organization? What is the status and prestige in pricing? Who are really calling the shots, and what's the perception of sales and marketing regarding pricing? Is pricing in the organization more of a clerical function? Is it accepted as a strategy partner? Are there priority conflicts between functions? So all these questions really, if you're starting a journey in value excellence and you're in the pricing function and you try to get things moving in your organization, the current pricing culture is going to influence your, where you start from and your level of maturity. And I see it as a potential barrier to achieve greater level of value capture, and it needs to be addressed very soon in the process. So there are many ways that you can improve collaboration in teams, and when it comes to pricing and value management, I list here 5, but I'm sure you could find a lot more than 5, but in the interest of time, I'm going to focus on these 5. I've written a lot about Pricing Council and how Pricing Council can be very conducive of collaboration and alignment, and really help establish a common language, consensus around priorities, and the language of value. Then we'll talk a little bit about change management principles and how pricing teams, or marketing teams, managing pricing activities can also really accelerate the level of collaborative culture by bringing the sales force on board very early in the process. Then we'll talk about one of the most critical components of a value culture is alignment, and alignment at all levels is probably, or the lack of alignment is probably one of the greatest barriers of the success of pricing, when you have teams that are incentivized in volume versus teams that are incentivized in profit, or conflicting priorities, or lack of alignment between business strategy and pricing strategy or value strategy. So, and then the alignment around the value construct. What does value mean to many functions? So we'll talk about this, and then I'll look at how value modeling and the use of specific platforms such as the LeveragePoint platform can really accelerate the deployment of a value strategy by promoting cross-functional collaboration. And I can tell you, I've certified in my, so far 203 people in the CVM process, the customer value modeling process, and most of these sessions were multifunctional team setup, where you could see the greater level of alignment and collaboration when we do value modeling together. So in essence, you have a sales guy and a finance person and maybe a marketing and pricing person working together. Creates a tremendous level of cross-functional alignment. And at the end, when you design pricing training program or value training program, who is involved and who gets trained, and we'll talk about this a little bit. So let's get started on these 5 one by one. So really, collaboration starts in the Pricing Council. And Pricing Council, as you know, and there are papers out there that I've written on the topic, is a cross-functional team really discussing the strategy and tactics of pricing in a very focused setup, one meeting every month, where actually all decisions are made in a collaborative manner. And the sales team is obviously sitting at the table, hopefully with the top manager, the general manager or the CEO, the president of a division, depending on what level, the level and the scope of the pricing council. But you need really to use the pricing council to have mindful and very candid discussion on what needs to be done to reach greater level of value excellence, obviously. Rational, so that rational discussion, so we can bring in the data that's coming at multiple points of the organization and have a rational and not emotional discussion about it. Well, for example, when a competitor starts a price war, then is that truly a price war? Maybe it comes from the sales guys that's saying this. Well, is a marketing team also hearing that? Are distributors hearing that? Is that something that came through customer service? So it is a platform where you can have a very fact-based discussions, and then leading to more rational decisions. But also looking at, can we create new innovative value models or pricing models to be introduced into market? So I highly recommend any organization that is embarking on value strategies or pricing strategies to form immediately, and that can be done in the next 30 days, a pricing council or value council, depending on what you want to achieve. So the pricing council, the objective of a pricing council is to reach what I call the C4 zone. The zone of communication, a zone of collaboration, a zone of convergence, and a zone of consensus. Because at the end, the council is the place where all pricing and value decisions are taken in a cross-functional environment, reaching consensus. So most of the time, you'll have meetings around pricing or value, and decisions will be taken outside of the meetings. Well, this is what the pricing council is trying to change. If there is a discussion to be had on a new product introduction or a repositioning of pricing levels in the value map, for example, it is important to have that discussion in the pricing council with all the parties involved, all the right relevant parties, so that when a decision is done, it's taken. And that's why, there's a lot of communication. There's going to be convergence slowly by showing facts and data and maybe, I would say, addressing some emotional issues with the decisions. But at the end of the day, when the pricing council is done, the decisions are done with top management in the room. So it is a review of KPIs, but it is also a discussion of major agreements that need to be achieved on deals, exception, deviation, and maybe, for example, introduction of new businesses, new business development, etc. So pricing council, great for collaboration, as long as you make sure that decisions are taken within the council, and then you reach the great level of consensus. So change management, obviously, I'm doing quite a bit of work in change management. As a matter of fact, I'll be offering a 2-day workshop at the Dallas conference, with PPS conference. It is critical to reach, a faster acceptance of all the pricing and value programs by the sales force early on. So you have here the Rogers diffusion curve, where you have innovators, early adopters, early majority, and late majority, laggards, and the skeptics, people who will never get on board. And usually when I work in change management in the organization, I really ask them to make sure that within the sales team, the clients find who are the innovators and early adopters in the sales force, and bringing them on board in the design of the project. So if you, for example, you are right now deciding whether you're going to deploy the LeveragePoint platform, then you can bring some of the champions in the field who actually do great value work, get them involved in the design, in the original discussions to bring the platform in the design of the platform, the pilot project, and make sure that they are representing the sales force, and then becoming the relay of information between the sales teams and whoever is leading, whether it's marketing or pricing, the deployment. And whether you do a software deployment, or you do a new method deployment, or you go into value-based pricing, as soon as you can get the sales force on board by identifying the people who are really driving adoption within the sales force, it is critical, because that's going to definitely increase the level of collaboration to get things done. Too many times, too many times the sales force comes towards the end of the process. And in the late majority, when you bring in other functions in the process, that is a strategic mistake. And actually, when I conduct a certification session on customer value modeling, I highly recommend that the sales force is invited, or at least a few salespeople, so that they can get a taste of what it's all about, what value management is all about, and engage in great discussions with marketing and pricing. So that is definitely a point to be considered. So change management is about doing blueprinting and designing together, discovering the potential value and pricing issues in the business together. It's conducting a what's in it for me analysis for sales, the WIIFM, the WIFM, doing a very detailed WIFM analysis for the sales force, and make sure that particular attention is paid towards bringing the sales force on board as soon as possible. And from there, you will see a great level of collaboration, a greater level of collaboration between sales, pricing, and marketing. The third pillar, I would say, and I could spend a whole 2 days on that, is strategic alignment between functions. So obviously, some companies have more of a collaboration cultures. Others may have more of a silo culture, and where maybe you work in the matrix organization where there are very strong silos or boundaries between the functions, physical or functional. But it is critical, obviously, as you know, as a business professionals, to have a strong alignment between what the overall business strategy is, what the marketing strategy is, and what the pricing strategies are. And I can guarantee you that in many organizations it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because of the distance between the function, or the structure of the organization, or the fact that maybe pricing is not yet back to the culture that we talked about. Pricing is somewhere reporting to another function that is, and the voice of pricing becomes forgotten or not fully accepted. So the greater the alignment, obviously, the greater the success of pricing and value strategies. Now, remember that value is not just pricing. Value is also value-based marketing, value-based innovation, and value-based selling. So there is a greater need for alignment in value strategies. But if you look at pricing strategies per se, when you're thinking about doing value-based pricing tactics or strategies, marketing alignment is important, and you cannot be a low-cost player and have a premium pricing strategy. I think at the end there needs to be an alignment in overall corporate strategy and the pricing strategy. The second is, and that's the one that I actually found as being the biggest barriers for collaboration in teams, is the corporate goals being totally misaligned between the functions. So an innovation team, for example, will have an innovation rate goal, or ROI goal for R&D, or the number of new products to launch, where the sales force will have a market share, a volume, and a percentage of budget being accomplished. And then the pricing team will have other, maybe price realization. The marketing will have more gross margin. And I would say, there is, at some point when you move through the stages of the maturity curve in value and pricing, it is important that the more you go towards the greatest level of maturity, the more the alignment needs to be, I would say, profound and transformative. Because at some point things stop being done. I mean, you're not getting things done if you have functional goals and incentives that are misaligned. Because when you get into execution of value and pricing strategies, it is difficult to get people on board. It is difficult to get people motivated and to have them pay attention to your programs. So to increase the performance of your execution strategy, I would say having goals and incentive systems fully aligned is a must. Otherwise, you're stuck in the middle of the maturity curve, or in what I call the zone of good intentions, and things don't get done. And then, most people spend their time and say, what's not working? Well, obviously there is an issue of collaboration. The lack of collaboration is, the issue, but at the root cause of the issue is different strategic priorities, different goals, and different incentive systems, and a misalignment between all these strategies, because everybody is working in silos. So this is obviously when that happens in an organization, it's far beyond the control of the pricing professionals. It's far beyond the control of the marketing professional. It becomes a top leadership discussion, and I can tell you, many organizations lack the courage to really start having very candid discussion about incentive systems. At what point in the value strategy deployment do you change the sales force compensation? At what point do you make sure that 40-50% of the incentives plans overlap between 6, 7, 8 types of functions, so that there is an overlap in incentives between innovation and pricing, between sales and marketing, between finance and accounting and sales, so that there is no more finger pointing, no more, hey, it's not my function, I'm accomplishing my objectives, I don't know what's going on. So it requires definitely some assessments and a will from top leadership to create that strategic alignment. Another type of alignment that's important is the language of value and pricing. So I've written about this a lot, and there needs to be a common definition, common vocabulary being used between the functions, so that the value for an accountant means the same, than value for a salesperson and value for a pricing person. Especially if you start deploying value strategies where there needs to be a lot more cross-functional collaboration. It's important to have the right definitions in place. So one way to accomplish that is to do value modeling activities in cross-functional settings and rediscover together true differentiations for the value and the service that the actual organization sells and produces and sells. Jointly translate product and service attributes into real customer benefits. So imagine the power of this when you do value modeling activities, and you have in the same team, you may have a controller, a sales manager, an import manager or export manager, a marketing person, and a pricing person, and you do it for real life product. So no theoretical product, but for a product for your organization, and you actually rediscover the true differentiation, translate the attributes into customer benefit, quantify the economic value of your product and services. And when you do this in multifunctional teams, it really realign the perceptions that people have about how truly they're differentiated and how much value you bring to the customers, as well as establish a base for the language of value and pricing. So they learn together, people, experiment together, they reach consensus in these groups of 5 or 6. And at the end, they bounce numbers and ideas off each other and create a consensus around, hey, here's the value we think we deliver to the customers, and this is how much we should try to capture in the market. I can tell you my experience in doing multifunctional value modeling activities. It creates lasting communication lines between the team. I actually had sessions where people had never met in big organization. We had brought 40 people together to do value modeling in groups of 5 or 6, and I had people who never met, and they established great relationship, and they discovered each other's functions, and definitely helped with the collaboration spirit, I would say. So the last one is really looking at training programs and going beyond the traditional training programs that you might do around whether it's value modeling or pricing training, and really asking yourself the question, who needs to be trained? Who needs to be at some point involved in the training program, so that when you try to move your value culture to another level, everybody gets on board, and there's not like half of the organization getting it and the other half left behind. And I often get from the sales force the pushback when we do training associated with projects is, why are we the only one to get trained? What is it always about the sales force? Why are pricing teams so involved in training the sales force? What about the inside sales? What about marketing? What about training innovation? What about training people in distribution branches? And that's a good question. So here I propose that, and I know it's not very legible, but this is a type of training agenda or roadmap that I've created for organizations where you look at the various types of training on the headers: product differentiation, value proposition and vision, value selling training, value messaging and communication training, pricing strategy training. And here you have on the rows all the teams that are going to be trained. And I've designed training roadmap for value strategies that are very thorough, including all these teams that are listed, including human resources, supply chain team, IT, marketing, and groups. The executive team needs to be trained. So here, for example, we have the executive team being trained on value proposition and visioning, but also on value messaging. So that what you want to do is establish an army of people who go out and value message, supporting the value model, supporting the value proposition, and not just the sales force. So that the sales force, when they visit the headquarters, they visit the team, they hear it from some other people. And it creates kind of a reassurance, say, hey, we're not the only one getting trained. Everybody's getting trained. This is a very strategic project. Also, the organization is spending quite a bit of money on training. So I'm going to take that seriously. So the challenge here is to be holistic enough to make sure that all aspects of the value strategy and the value, the critical element of the value prop is being included in the training roadmap. So, for example, product differentiation, what is a true differentiation? Could be a simple half-hour training module on a webinar, or as part of a marketing training program where you actually establish in the head of your employees what is a true differentiation of your product or services, and everybody speaks the same language. So it is all about creating a bridge between sales, marketing, and pricing, and those are I would say the biggest, the most important function in the value management process. I could argue you could bring innovation in, and I spent quite a bit of time working in value-based innovation, because at the end, the sooner you can do value modeling or your innovation and understand the value proposition you have in your innovation, the greater it is later in marketing, pricing, and selling. But we want to avoid these, throwing over the wall, of products and brochures and selling materials where, at the end you give these documents to sales, and sales look at them and say, well, what the heck is that? I've never seen that before. And usually that's where you have a lot of pushback and a lot of finger pointing, and they say, well, I'm not going to do it. And that's why a lot of teams are stuck in the zone of good intention. Imagine doing this together. Imagine creating, designing, establishing great relationship when you're early on the process. The sooner you can do that together in a collaborative way, the greater you are, as far as deploying value-based selling, value-based pricing activities later in the execution phase. So it's all about sales and pricing working together with marketing, with innovation and other functions, jointly defining the pricing strategy, the guidelines, and the guardrail. It's about establishing, if there needs to be deviation and guidelines and processes, together doing it. And most often, I will see pricing teams doing that and then delivering it to the sales force. And I think it's the wrong way of doing it. You have to make sure that the sales force remains in control of pricing tactics. And I'm a big believer in the center-led model, where pricing and marketing are known as the experts, the knowledge experts, but there is a fair amount of authority left with the sales force within the guidelines that are jointly defined, and not the guidelines that are defined by the pricing people and given to sales. So you define jointly the guidelines, the steps, the guardrails, and then you give authority to the sales force within the guidelines with a deviation and approval process. Compensation plans needs to be aligned. We talked about this already. And then at the end, the pricing council becomes the forum for dialogue, for consensus. And not, obviously, there might be some tough discussions, but at the end, we leave the pricing council and we have made decision, and everything that we talked about before here, the guidelines are well accepted by multiple functions. So it's a matter of establishing a winning team and to really create a buy-in from sales, I would say, and the sooner you can involve them, the greater it is at the end. Making sure that perceptually, pricing is owned by both sales and pricing and sometimes marketing, and not, I'm the pricing person, I own pricing. Now, obviously, it's a definitional issue, who owns what, but at the end, as pricing professionals, it is important to do work so that other functions have a perception of their staff skin in the game. They are in the process, they own a piece of it, and not, I'm executing somebody else's work. Keep it simple. Obviously, it's a key success factor. The more complicated, the more it's going to be difficult for execution. Another one that's very, that I found very important as far as a key success factor for collaboration is to send the pricing team in the field, and including the marketing team. And I've seen organizations where the marketing team doesn't spend enough time on the road, but that's a different topic. But early on the projects, when everything is in place and the design is successful and we're in execution mode, it is time for the pricing team to spend 30 to 40% in the field supporting sale, so that there is an element of coalition building. And in change management theory, that the greater the coalition, the greater the success for change. So not only you design together, you have great buy-in up front, but then you're going out and supporting the execution in the field. And I do believe that pricing is the value R&D of sales. Pricing should provide sales innovative tools, methods, approaches, idea around value delivery, value capture, and not just the static, here is my price list, here is my guidelines, go sell. There needs to be a lot of creativity and design together and finding new ways of doing things. And as you know, our friends from the sales force are very good at creating their own models and tools. So it is, joining forces to be even more collaborative and innovative together. So it was a short half hour on that. You've seen I gave you 5 tools to get maybe to embark on more collaboration and more collaborative program. There's a lot to be written and discussed about this. I found that collaboration is key in change management, is key to moving your value strategies to the next step. And I hope you learned a few tips today. So I'll pass it over to Ed now for questioning, I believe. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Stephan. A very thoughtful and excellent presentation. And we do have some time for questions. A couple have already come in, and there's still time to add yours to the list now if anybody wants to put a question to Stephan Liozu. Now, before we get to the questions, I just want to remind everyone to fill out the exit survey today. If you do, you'll have a chance to win this book, The ROI of Pricing. And while I have a few minutes, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how LeveragePoint helps companies establish and support a collaborative sales and pricing culture. So you'll notice that it starts with a cloud-based platform that allows companies to scale their best practices in collaboration with a central searchable database of key customer data. That product marketing and pricing teams collaborate and use to build value models, and they use those value models to devise their product strategy, as well as to produce a variety of marketing and sales content, which in turn the customer-facing teams use in their value-based selling process. And since this is a platform, it captures feedback so that the entire organization gets smarter after each and every customer meeting. So it's a powerful platform technology that does a lot of the things that Stephan was talking about today, which is how do you get a variety of folks across different functions together around a common approach, around a common culture. So I thought I would share a few quotes that some of our customers said about using a platform like this, and you'll see There's comments about how it makes it easier for people to use, and that's really important if you're talking about different functions who are new to value. Obviously, there's the collaboration aspect of it, of having people be able to communicate, even folks that don't necessarily know or work with each other. It certainly adds a lot of efficiency, but what I think is most compelling is the bottom line results that come from having a platform to drive and scale value-based culture. And you'll see this is an actual quote, 2 to 4% increase in gross margins on all new projects and offers that we deal with. So the key to achieving this, a lot of it really involves effective sales execution. And this is where a lot of our customers have been focusing a lot in the last year or so. And in response to that, we've dedicated a number of our monthly releases to enhancing our sales communication capabilities. And one of the things that we've learned is that to be effective, our platform needs to be flexible, because obviously companies do value selling in a number of different ways. So it boils down to having the right people, delivering the right types of messages to the right types of audiences at the right time. So that's what we've endeavored to do. So let me show you an example of how this actually works. Here you see one of our online value proposition templates. It's fully customizable, obviously dynamic. You'll notice that it has a PowerPoint-like look and feel, but unlike PowerPoint, it's not a linear slide-by-slide presentation, but more of a flexible, dynamic layout that allows a salesperson to tailor that presentation in front of the customer in real time, showing the value headlines to capture the customer's attention. That's easily updated with key variables on the spot, with consistent graphics and messaging, and it allows the ability to drill into the deeper levels of detail as appropriate. And this is an approach that we found builds trust and validates the customer's value positioning, and it also gives salespeople much more confidence in talking about value. So I appreciate you listening to that. If you're interested in learning more, you can contact us at LeveragePoint. All right, so time to answer some of the questions. And Stephan, a few of them have come in already. So let me just start with the first here. What are the typical pushback questions you get during Salesforce value training?
Well, so if we're talking about the value training around the quantification of value, there is a lot of discussion around the actual the number that's created for the customer. And most of the time, if the sales force has not been involved in value modeling, then they're going to reject some of the numbers. They're going to say resist. They say, well, how can you justify $1 million value created? Where is that number coming from? So I think, and that will be a little bit of the same, resistance you'll get from customers if you don't test your numbers with a few customers before you go out. So, and that's what I always encourage to have salespeople involved in value modeling and in building actual value models, extracting true differentiation and quantifying it. The sooner they can be involved, the more they believe in the numbers, because they're going to make sure that there's reality in the numbers. So, another level of resistance is around the management of pricing objections. So we do exercise around that, and what are the responses possibly that we could create, value messages that we could create for them to delete, to respond to objections. I would say other objections I get is, and I often mention that is, if you want to have excellence in value strategies, you have to be excellent in execution across the board. It is difficult to establish great level of value in the mind of the customers if you have delivery breakdowns, if you have quality issues. So most of the time that you will hear in these training sessions, the salespeople saying, well, how can I sell with a premium of 20%, or how can I sell that number if I cannot deliver on time? So it is value excellence requires execution excellence. And I often find companies and I tell them, fix your issues, at the same time, work on your priorities should be on fixing your issues. Because the more breakdowns you have, the more objections you're going to get on, from buyers in paying the premium. So that's a little bit of what I hear in value training.
Okay, great answer. Let me just build on that question because while you were talking, I recalled a question that we heard recently with one of our customers, and it went something like, we're going to be approaching customers now with a new type of communication around value, and we're not sure how customers are going to react to that. They may be a little skeptical or suspicious. I'm just wondering, in your experiences, how would you respond to a question like that?
Well, it is a standard. There is actually some researchers out of Scandinavia that did studies about value objections and and the typical answers you get from customers. And I think at the end of the day, because in the value-based pricing process, you have to have a segmentation process. Usually when you face a lot of value objections on your numbers, potentially it could be that you're facing the wrong customers or you forgot to do segmentation. And the beauty of your tool, the platform, LeveragePoint platform, is you could do value models for different segments, and it's fairly quickly to do because it's using the libraries and using the platform and all the good work you've created. And it's the most common step that's neglected in value-based pricing is the segmentation process. So, and the greater the segmentation process, the greater the adjustment of the value numbers and the value messages to the right audience, which you were, showing in your slides before.
Okay. Next question, and we've got a couple questions related to this. Let me try to synthesize them. And it's regarding public companies, and I think the gist of it is, is there anything different about, public companies and value that you need to be aware of, or, is it an approach that's different in publicly held companies? Are there particular challenges with respect to that? I'm hoping I have the question restated properly. If not, if the participant could put that back into the questions panel. But Stephan, I was just wondering if you had any comments about public companies.
Yeah. So the only thing that changes in the publicly traded company is the fact that profit numbers are out and customers can go out and see how much money you make as an organization. So when you go in and if you do value strategies and you actually have a premium pricing strategy where you actually have a lot of premium and you're justifying through value messaging, most of the time the buyers will prepare themselves and know how much profit you're making, and they'll try to say, hey, you're already making 20% profit margin. Why should I pay more for your product? Because you already make enough profit. So when I do, for example, the value objection, the pricing objection, the value response exercise, usually will include that in there, right? And tell them it's okay to make profit because, by the way, we're reinvesting most of that profit into R&D. We're a very innovative company. We have patents, etc. So it's a matter of because there is transparency in your results and everything is published. And most likely in B2B, the buyers, the professional buyer, will study your annual report, and they'll prepare for your coming in trying to deliver a value message. So you just have to be ready to support the objection related to that. Okay,
great answer. Thank you. Another question is about the difference between a pricing council that you described and a pricing committee. So the question was about, we have pricing committees at our companies. How is that different from a pricing council?
Okay, obviously it's a question of vocabulary and how you name it. I can tell you in my experience and with the clients that I work with, the pricing committee is a group of pricing people from various divisions working together at establishing best practices, tracking the ROI of pricing projects, and looking at the progress in strategic initiatives like software deployment, etc. So they usually meet every quarter or twice a year, and it's a pricing meeting with pricing people, and it's great. I think if you have a large pricing team that's very geographically dispersed and with many divisions, I think it's important to have a pricing committee. Now, a pricing council is, I would say, depending on the size of your organization, is done for a particular division for an organization if you have a mid-size or small-size business, but it's a multifunctional team with sales, finance, marketing, supply chain, accounting, and obviously led by pricing in the presence of the general manager, the president, or the CEO. And you've seen many essays that I wrote about pricing council, and including what we did in Ardex when I was in charge of the Americas division of Ardex. We had a pricing council, and it was 12, 15 people from various functions meeting 90 minutes per month. So it's a big difference because it is about making operational decisions about pricing with sales and all the functions right there. And we left the meeting with decisions made. So the pricing folks were proposing, for example, new product pricing, and as a team we would discuss it. And we would review the value models prepared by the price, because we were on LeveragePoint, we adopted LeveragePoint, and we were looking at do we have the right value calculation? Do we capture the right portion of the value pool? So this is the type of discussion you have in Value Council. Two different setups.
Okay, a couple more questions just came in. The first one is, in your experience, what is the single biggest showstopper in implementing a value-based pricing model in a company that does not have that company culture?
Okay, so if you're early on the process, I would say the biggest showstopper is lack of top management support. So, because as you know, people listen to several voices, and the one they listen to the most is what the CEO or the top leaders are saying. So, if there is a lack of declaration of the strategic initiative, value-based pricing is a strategic initiative, then it's going to start very slowly. If you're already in the process, I would say the biggest showstopper for me is the lack of alignment in compensation. And there's a lot of discussions around compensation, but it's difficult to do. And changing holistically a whole divisional compensation system with thousands of salespeople, it's not an easy proposition. And I actually will do a workshop at the PPS event in the fall on Salesforce compensation for value excellence, because it is a topic that needs a lot more attention. And it is definitely a showstopper. You could do all the best project and change management you want in an organization. If the Salesforce is not compensated to support the cultural change and the behavioral change, it's not going to happen.
You may have already answered the second question, because that relates directly to sales and how to get Salesforce engagement or buy-in to the value process. So you mentioned the compensation system, but are there other factors?
Well, I can tell you sometimes you have to, it depends on your overall culture. I mean, I'll give you an example. In my former employer at Ardex, we had a very good collaboration culture. But we took and you remember, Ed, you were involved when we deployed LeveragePoint in the organization. We gave the project management leadership to a director of sales. And if you really want to get the sales force embracing these projects and with strong buy-in, give them to sales to deploy. It's the same if you want to do a great pricing and value training. Have the training delivered by a sales manager, not a pricing person. And that is a game changer, because it is a director of sales deploying LeveragePoint across an entire organization to support the sales force. And obviously you put the sales leader with the most charismatic, approach and very well respected, very credible, that changes the game in adoption. So typically, this kind of a deployment will go to pricing and IT and maybe marketing. I go and, I'm more disruptive, and I'll say give it to a very charismatic champion in the sales team as project leader.
Okay, I think one last question here. Can you give some examples of role model companies in terms of this sales and pricing collaboration?
Yeah, so you have, you have a lot of them. I would say Eastman Chemical, Parker Hannifin, and those are typically the companies that do it very well. DuPont and Schneider Electric. Some of them are already very well en route of on the pricing and value maturity curve. I would say some of them already use your LeveragePoint, the platform. They realize the potential of cross-functional value modeling, and I think generally speaking, those are organizations that have very strong cultures and understand the power of pricing and value strategies in general. But it starts at the top, and unfortunately, the role of the CEO, when the CEO is on board supporting this inside and out, then you see in the result, you see in the culture, and the right tools are deployed. So, you could read about many of these. If you read the pricing papers coming out and the papers related to value, you'll see these companies mentioned a lot. So Hilti is one, DuPont is another one, and those are usually the ones that are showcased at the pricing conferences.
All right. So we have your contact information up on the slide there. If people have additional questions, you can contact Stephan Liozu. From there, we'll also be sending a copy of these slides to those who registered for today's webinar, and there'll be a recording on our website within a couple of days. I just want to make a brief announcement about the upcoming professional pricing conference. Stephan mentioned that earlier. It's in early May in Dallas. And as Stephan mentioned, he will be doing a 2-day workshop there on change management on May the 5th and 6th. And as well, LeveragePoint CEO Peyton Marshall is doing a breakout session on May 8th on the topic of how pricing can drive the sales transformation to selling value. Some really good examples that build a lot on what what Stephan spoke about today. And of course, we'll be having a booth there, so if you are attending the conference, please stop by and say hello, and you can get more details about the conference on the PPS website. All right, and with that, let me just say again, thank you, Stephan, for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll talk to you next time.